In 1977, the United States Senate held hearings on a CIA program called MKUltra. The program ran from 1953 to 1973. It involved dosing unwitting American citizens with LSD, subjecting them to electroshock therapy, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture, all in an attempt to understand how to break down the human mind and rebuild it in a desired direction. The CIA destroyed most of the documents in 1973 when they realized an investigation was coming. What survived confirmed enough that the Senate called it, in their own words, a fundamental violation of the rights of American citizens. Nobody went to prison. The program ended. The knowledge it produced did not. That is not a theory. That is a Senate hearing transcript, available at Senate.gov right now. The question this episode asks is, what did they learn? And where did that knowledge go?
Welcome back to the Promethean Depths. I'm Solon.
Zale. Today we go into mass psychosis, not the academic version, the operational version, because this is not a historical episode. What we're going to walk through today is a documented mechanism with named programs, named perpetrators, and a philosophical framework for understanding how it works. That is running on the general population right now, in real time, using your phone as the primary delivery system.
Everything in this episode is on the record. Senate transcripts, declassified CIA documents, peer-reviewed psychology, named researchers, named programs. We are going to connect the dots between a 1953 CIA mind control program, a 100 AD Roman poet, a 2021 Belgian psychology professor, and the reason you can't stop doom scrolling at midnight while the world is on fire. These things are connected, and once you see the connection, you cannot unsee it.
Stay with us, because halfway through this episode, we are going to name the specific psychological conditions that make a population susceptible to mass formation. And then we are going to check them off one by one against the world you woke up in this morning. Every single one. Present. Simultaneously. Right now. That moment is worth staying for.
Let's go.
Let's define the term properly. Mass psychosis, or what academic psychology calls mass formation or mass psychogenic illness, is a documented phenomenon in which large populations detach from individual reasoning and merge into a collective psychological state driven by shared anxiety, shared narrative, and shared enemy. The individual's critical thinking doesn't disappear. It is redirected toward the group, toward the narrative, away from independent analysis. This is not new. The dancing plague of 1518, documented by physicians at the time, saw hundreds of people in Strasbourg dance uncontrollably for days, some until they died, with no apparent physical cause. The Salem witch trials of 1692, documented in court records, produced mass accusation, mass confession, and mass execution driven by collective hysteria with no factual basis. The daycare sex abuse hysteria of the 1980s, documented in multiple judicial reviews, produced hundreds of false convictions based on testimony that was later shown to have been produced through psychological pressure. These are not fringe cases. These are documented events in Western legal and medical history.
Matthias Desmet, a professor of clinical psychology at Ghent University, published the modern framework in his book, The Psychology of Totalitarianism, in 2022. Desmet identified 4 specific psychological conditions that, when present simultaneously in a population, create what he calls a mass formation, the precondition for collective psychosis. Condition 1, widespread social isolation. A population where people lack meaningful bonds, not just acquaintances, but genuine community, genuine belonging, is a population with no psychological anchor outside the group narrative. Condition 2, Free-floating anxiety, stress that has no clear object, not fear of a specific thing you can address, but a generalized sense that something is wrong, that danger is everywhere, that the ground is unstable. Anxiety without a target is the most psychologically destabilizing form of fear. Condition 3, free-floating frustration and aggression, anger that has no clear outlet, no mechanism for resolution, just chronic low-grade rage looking for somewhere to land. Condition 4, absence of meaning and purpose, a population that has lost connection to genuine values, genuine community, genuine direction.
When those 4 conditions exist simultaneously, a population is primed. It is in a state of maximum psychological vulnerability. And at that moment, all that is required is a narrative. Something that gives the anxiety an object. Something that names an enemy. Something that says, here is what is wrong. Here is who is responsible. Here is what you must do. When that narrative arrives, the crowd forms instantly. Critical thinking collapses. The individual dissolves into the group. And once a person is inside the mass formation, they will defend the narrative against all evidence, because the narrative is now their identity. Attacking the narrative feels like attacking them personally. This is not a character flaw. It is a documented psychological mechanism.
And here is where it becomes an episode about right now, because Desmond's 4 conditions are not historical. They are not theoretical. They are present, in this country, in this moment, and we are going to go through each one.
Condition 1, social isolation. The United States Surgeon General issued an advisory in 2023 declaring loneliness a public health epidemic. His words, an epidemic. Approximately half of American adults report measurable levels of loneliness. Community institutions, churches, civic organizations, neighborhood structures have collapsed over the past 50 years. The average American has fewer close friends than at any point in recorded survey history. A 2021 Harvard study found that 36% of Americans, including 61% of young adults, reported feeling seriously lonely. The first condition for mass formation is not approaching. It is here.
Condition 2, free-floating anxiety. Since 2019, anxiety disorders have become the most common mental health condition in the United States, affecting an estimated 40 million adults. But beyond diagnosed disorders, the general background level of anxiety in the population is at a documented historical high. The American Psychological Association's annual Stress in America survey consistently shows that large majorities of Americans report significant stress about the future, about safety, about economic stability, about the direction of the country, without being able to identify a specific, addressable cause. That is free-floating anxiety by definition. The second condition is here.
Condition 3, free-floating aggression. Political polarization in the United States is at its highest measured level in modern history. Pew Research Center data shows that the percentage of Americans who view the opposing political party as a threat to the nation's well-being has doubled since 2016. Road rage incidents are at record highs. Online harassment is at record highs. Random acts of public aggression have increased year over year for the past 5 years. People are angry. They don't fully know why. They are looking for somewhere to put it. The third condition is here.
Condition 4, absence of meaning and purpose. A 2023 Gallup study found that only 23% of American workers are engaged in their work. The majority are either not engaged or actively disengaged, going through motions in a system they don't believe in, toward goals they didn't choose, inside structures that offer no genuine meaning. Rates of nihilism and existential despair, particularly among young adults, are at documented historical highs. religious affiliation, which historically provided a meaning structure regardless of its truth claims, has declined sharply with no equivalent structure replacing it. The fourth condition is here.
All four, simultaneously, in the same population, at the same moment in history. Desmet's framework is not a prediction. It is a description of the present. And the question that follows from that description, the question this episode was always building toward, is who benefits and what are they doing with it? Stay with us, because in the next segment, we are going to go from theory to operation. We are going to name the specific documented programs, with dates, with congressional testimony, with declassified files, in which the United States government and private institutions deliberately studied, and in some cases deliberately created, the psychological conditions we just described. This is not about what might be happening. It is about what we know happened, and what the knowledge from those programs looks like when it runs on the infrastructure of a smartphone. KUltra, 1953 to 1973, CIA. The program had 150 sub-projects. It ran experiments at 80 institutions, including 44 universities and 12 hospitals. It tested LSD, barbiturates, mescaline, and electroshock therapy on unwitting subjects, including mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and sex workers who were considered, in the program's own documentation, expendable. The goal stated in the program's own files was, quote, the research and development of chemical, biological, and radiological materials capable of employment in clandestine operations to control human behavior. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence investigated KUltra in 1977. CIA Director Stansfield Turner testified. The committee concluded that the program involved, quote, a fundamental disregard for the value of human life. Senator Ted Kennedy stated in the hearing that what had occurred represented a dark chapter in American history. The transcripts of those hearings are at Senate.gov. The CIA documents are at CIA.gov. This is not contested history.
Operation Mockingbird, documented in the Church Committee hearings of 1975. The CIA had, by the early 1970s, placed operatives inside major American news organizations, including the Washington Post, Time Magazine, and CBS News, who shaped editorial content in ways favorable to CIA objectives. The program involved over 400 American journalists who, knowingly or unknowingly, served as CIA assets. The goal was not just to suppress specific stories. The goal was to shape the general information environment, the background assumptions of an entire population about what was real, what was possible, what was dangerous, who was an enemy. COINTELPRO, FBI, 1956 to 1971. Documented in files obtained by activists who broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania in 1971 and leaked the documents to journalists. The program targeted civil rights organizations, anti-war groups, the Black Panther Party, and individual leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. The tactics included sending forged letters designed to create internal conflict within organizations, planting informants who encouraged illegal activity, and making anonymous calls to the employers of activists. The explicit stated goal in the FBI's own documents was to prevent the rise of a charismatic leader who could unify and direct opposition to government policy. The program wasn't just surveillance. It was deliberate psychological destabilization of organized resistance. What do these programs have in common? They are not about imprisoning dissidents. They are about preventing dissent from forming. The question they were all answering, in different ways, at different scales, was, how do you manage a population without visible force? How do you keep people compliant, divided, and psychologically unable to organize without them knowing it's being done? That question was studied for decades by funded researchers, in funded programs, with documented results.
And now we turn to where that knowledge lives today. Because KUltra ended, COINTELPRO ended, Operation Mockingbird officially ended. But the knowledge those programs generated about how human psychology can be shaped, how populations can be managed, how anxiety can be manufactured and directed, that knowledge did not disappear. It was absorbed by the behavioral science departments of the technology companies that now have direct access to the interior of your attention 16 hours a day.
In 2017, Chamath Palihapitiya, the former vice president of user growth at Facebook, gave a talk at Stanford Business School. He said, on record, the short-term, dopamine-driven feedback loops we've created are destroying how society works. No civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, mistruth. And it's not an American problem. This is not about Russian ads. This is a global problem. I feel tremendous guilt. I think we all knew, and we didn't want to admit it. That quote is on video. It is on the record. A senior architect of the platform that shaped a generation's psychology admitted the damage and the knowledge with which it was done.
The algorithm is not neutral. It is optimized for engagement. And the emotions that produce the most engagement are not joy, curiosity, or inspiration. They are outrage, fear, and tribal identity threat. The platform knows this because it has run the experiment on billions of people simultaneously. It has A/B tested human psychology at a scale that no research program in history has approached. And the result, the optimized output, is a population that is more anxious, more isolated, more enraged, and more tribal than it was before it picked up the phone.
Juvenal identified the mechanism in approximately 100 AD. Writing about the Roman Empire, he used the phrase panem et circenses, bread and circuses. His observation was precise. A population that is fed and entertained will not revolt, regardless of the conditions it lives under. The grain dole kept physical survival handled. The games kept the emotional and psychological appetite fed with something that felt significant, without requiring genuine engagement with the conditions of actual life.
The modern version runs on the same logic with a more sophisticated delivery mechanism. Bread is Amazon's same-day delivery, DoorDash, and cheap fast food engineered for maximum palatability by food scientists using the same behavioral data models as the algorithm. Circuses are TikTok, Netflix, Call of Duty, 24-hour news, celebrity drama, and sports, none of which require genuine engagement with the conditions of actual life. The infrastructure exists to keep a population comfortable enough not to revolt and distracted enough not to think. And it runs automatically, without visible force, without anyone having to be explicitly coordinating it. It runs because it is profitable.
And here is the philosophical weight of that observation. The ancient Stoic and Hermetic traditions were obsessed with one question: what does it mean to live a genuinely human life? To use the full capacity of the mind? Every tradition that took those questions seriously identified the same enemy, not an external oppressor, the internal one, the part of the self that reaches for comfort over clarity, for distraction over development, for the circus over the question. 3 moves, not theory, practice. First, identify your circus. Specifically, what is the specific thing you reach for when anxiety becomes uncomfortable? The specific app, the specific content, the specific activity that functions as a pressure valve, that relieves the tension without addressing what's causing it? Name it, not to eliminate it immediately, just to see it. The circus loses power when you see it as a circus. Second, convert anxiety into inquiry. Free-floating anxiety has no object. It is just dread. The move against it is to give it a specific object and then examine that object. What specifically am I afraid of? Is this fear based on something I can verify? Something I have agency over? Or is it a fear that was handed to me by a feed that profits from my fear? That inquiry converts free-floating anxiety into information. Third, rebuild a genuine bond. 1. Not a network, not followers. One person you can have a conversation with that goes somewhere you didn't plan. Desmet's research is clear. The antidote to mass formation is not information. Information doesn't break it. What breaks it is genuine human connection. One real conversation a week, consistently, over time, changes the psychological conditions that make you susceptible.
And the philosophical close, the Hermetic principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. The mass psychosis running at the civilizational level is a reflection of the unexamined interior at the individual level. The manufactured anxiety outside is possible because genuine meaning is absent inside. The circus works because something real is missing. Every person who does the work of building genuine interiority, genuine values, genuine community, genuine purpose, is one less person the mechanism can operate on. That is not nothing. At scale, it is everything. I want to say something honestly before we close. There is a version of this conversation that tips into paranoia, where every institution is deliberately evil, every distraction is a coordinated weapon, every person scrolling is a helpless victim of a master plan. I don't think that's accurate. And I think it's actually another form of mass formation. It gives anxiety an enemy, and that relieves the free-floating quality temporarily. But it doesn't address the actual conditions. What I think is closer to the truth is harder and more empowering. The conditions for mass formation are real and present. Some of those conditions were deliberately created by programs we've named. Most of them are sustained not by coordination, but by incentive. The incentive structure of the attention economy produces mass psychological destabilization as a byproduct of profit maximization. You don't need a conspiracy when you have a business model. That distinction matters because it changes where you put your energy. The enemy is not a cabal meeting in secret. The enemy is the unexamined interior that makes the mechanism work. That enemy is in your control in a way that the cabal never could be.
The Promethean myth ends with the fire reaching humanity. Not the gods, not the institutions, the individuals who receive it and decide what to do with it. That is always where it ends. With the person who sees the mechanism, understands the architecture, and chooses, in the specific small daily choices of what to pay attention to, what to reach for, what to build, to be ungovernable.
Here is what is true about you if you made it to the end of this episode. You already knew something was wrong. You felt it before you had the framework. The anxiety, the distraction, the sense that the world is deliberately kept in a state of managed chaos. You felt that. What this episode gave you is the documented history underneath the feeling and the philosophical framework for what to do with it. You are not a victim of mass formation. You are someone who can see it. And a person who can see the mechanism is the one thing the mechanism cannot fully operate on. That's who you are. Don't forget it. This week, identify your circus, the specific thing you reach for when the anxiety becomes uncomfortable. Don't eliminate it yet. Just see it, name it, write it down. That visibility is the first move.
And have one real conversation, one person, one topic you actually care about. No phones, no agenda, just two people thinking together. Notice what it feels like compared to what the feed feels like. That comparison is data. Use it. That's episode 7 of the Promethean Depths. If this moves something in you, share it. Someone in your life is inside the mechanism right now and has the feeling, but not the framework. Give them this.
Subscribe. Leave a comment. Which of the 4 conditions hit closest to home? Isolation, anxiety, frustration, or absence of meaning. We read everyone. We go deeper every episode.
Comment awake if you already see the distraction machine for what it is. Comment waking if today is the first day you start naming it.
Question everything.